I think of the life of a miner who must work all his day underground, where his lamplight is all that will shine there, and it's dark and it's damp all around. It is 2 or 3 miles to the coal face, and the tunnel is jagged and low, but he cannot find work on the surface, so it's down in the mines he must go.
You mentioned there about building a house, playing inter-county football and working at the mines at the one time. Where did all the energy come from, Gay?
Well, I don't know. I suppose a lot of it was just willpower, you know, and enjoyment as well as that. I mean, we used to love going to games because, you know, once you were playing, you were looking forward to the weekend. You were looking forward to Sunday, going away to a game and meeting up with the lads. So in actual fact, you had 2 different families. You had your team and the club team and the mining team, you know. But there was times when I used to go to Roscommon maybe on a Tuesday night for training on that, and I wouldn't have got back home for, you know, you wouldn't get maybe time to wash or that kind of thing. You go up to Roscommon, you give the face a rub, all right, and you'd be clean down to here, and you could go in and do the training, but then you had the clean clothes in the bag, or fairly clean clothes in the bag, and after you came in then you snuck into the showers and you had a wash, but you see this dirt would be flowing down you, and somebody, well, nobody ever pulled me on it, you know. I said that you're not too clean this evening, but you'd know yourself, you know, but that was the tough part of it, you know, where that's where you were time constrained.
And you'd be sharing a dressing room maybe with accountants or lawyers or fellas that would be based in offices at the time. But there was probably a respect for the work that you were doing.
I'd say there probably was, and not many people mentioned it now, to tell you the truth. The only ones that would mention things like that would be maybe supporters, because once they saw that you had what you had down as your resume on the programs, you know, some might mention, but very, very little now, you know. But people always knew what you'd done. Yeah. You know, so, but I mean,
talk to me for a minute about 1990 and when the mines closed. You were on a Roscommon, I think, panel at the time in 1990. I think you were a sub-goalkeeper.
That's right.
Roscommon won a Connacht Championship. They won it again in 91. But professionally, there was an awful lot going on with the mines about to close. How devastating was that for the locality and on a personal level, young family at the time? How difficult of a period was it, Gay?
Well, I mean, the thing about it is, things had changed. Things had changed, you know, also because obviously the power station was finished because they weren't going to do anything with it, and it wasn't cost effective to build another one. So I suppose
there was a stockpile there, they were going to use that, and then the power station was going to be closed.
The power station was going to be closed.
And that was situated down in the banks of Loch Allen.
That was it, down in the banks of Loch Allen. I remember that you'd always see that. It was a great landmark. Yeah. And I remember when it came down, I had a picture of it coming down from above there at Whistle Hill. But you see, that was the lifeline to here. And that was the lifeboat. And when the lifeboat was taken away, that was it. It was sink and swim at that stage. And I suppose the thing about it is, John, a lot of the men had probably come to their end at that stage. You know, the long-time miners were getting older. The younger fellas were, you know, they were able to do things, were maybe go on buildings or that kind of thing. Education was a huge thing because it changed all over the place. It even changed here in Origny.
Was there going to be a labour shortage or a labour crisis for the mines, even if they did stay open?
I'd say they probably would, yeah. I'd say they would, because anyone that was in it had been in it for maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 years. I remember talking to Michael Carty back in, must be in the mid-80s or whatever, and we were talking, he gave me a great cut about, you never got away with anything in the pit. You'd be cut to the bone. You know, there was no meanness in it, but you'd always be cut to the bone in it. And I asked Michael Carty one time, what age? He says, I'm 28. He was 14 years or 15 years in the pit at that stage. And I said, I couldn't believe that, you know. And that's 28. So he was maybe going to come to the end of it in another couple of years because he wanted to go away and go to England and see different things and that. And I said something to him, and he says, "You were very smart." He says, "You're too smart to be in the pit and not smart enough to be out of it." so I said, "You're probably right, Michael." I said, "All right," but you know that was the way things were. So it had changed from that point of view. The lads that were coming up they were getting educated. They were all going to college, and they were getting educated. And you can see it, look at all round about the place now, all the people that are...
There was less and less guys dropping out of school at, say, inter-cert level as it was at the time, or after the group cert that used to be there after 2 years, and then straight into the mines. Those numbers were diminishing.
Well, those numbers were going way down. You might even get somebody who was doing a leaving cert who come in, but they were only looking for a few shillings, a short time, bye. And that's the way it was. Whereas the long-term guys, a lot of them, some of them might have land or whatever, and they were supplementing their land with working in the mines. Mm-hmm. But the adaptation was different, and we were just saying there maybe only lately that if they were to open again, you get nobody to go into them. Yeah. Simple as that, you wouldn't get, because it's a different time. It's like it's like we said about the transport. Everything moved on, and now it's all digital.
Would mechanisation have made it easier, do you think, with advances in technologies, or would that still physical level of work, that still would be required of the people that would be working on it?
It would, because, John, the condition of the size of the coal seam dictated what you could bring in and what you couldn't bring in, and when you had a coal seam of maybe 14 to 18 inches, it's a totally different job than if you're in America or in England and you have a 5-foot seam, or that, where you had... I remember Paddy Waters worked in Wales in the coal mines, and he says the seam was this height, maybe 5 foot in it. And I said, that was a huge amount. It was, he says, and how'd you shift all that? Oh, he says, there was pit ponies in it. And the pit ponies were brought down, and they pulled the hutches and they filled them. And he says, if you didn't watch them, they'd eat your piece, your lunch. Yeah. And as soon as the break time came, they'd stop. The ponies wouldn't move until they had the men ate, and when the men ate, the ponies get going again, because they could nearly time it in their heads as well. So, it was a different thing in a 5-foot seam.
The physical conditions that they were working on, where you could bring in a pony or a horse, compared to you guys were lying underground and lying on the ground with a small space above your head trying to shovel out coal. It was a huge difference. Again, for people that are doing the miner's way here, now walking on the miner's way, and they look down at all the small farmsteads at the time, there were so many small farms in the area at the time, do you think it was a release for miners in some ways, maybe when they got out after being underground all day, working 8 hours or whatever, that the farm was almost a huge contrast and a sense of a release for them to get back? Do you think that drove a lot of them to be small farmers as well?
Oh, I'd say it did, John. Yeah, it did, because, and I mean, I would say to men, men now, they say, farmers now say, "Oh, it's tough." I said, the day you can go out and talk to a cow or whatever is great for your mental health.
Yes. And
a lot of them did, because they all, everything was structured. Some of them might do something before they went to work, a cow or whatever, look at a cow or a calf or whatever, then they went to work, and then they went home, they ate, and they went out straight away onto the land. And they were able to double job like that, and which is exactly what they needed, because,
you can still see it to this day.
You still see it to this day, and it's important for the well-being of somebody's health, that you have that kind of thing. I mean,
that have that. Final question that I just want to put to you, Gabe, if was to ask you for, I suppose, standout memories of your time in the mines. What do you remember most from them? Was there ever a sense of danger? Was there ever a sense of, did you ever see serious accidents? Were you ever worried about your safety at any stage in it? Or what would be the overriding memories that you will take from your time in the mines?
Well, I think the biggest one that we would always remember is the fact that Martin Byrne got paralysed in the mine that we were in. I was on the evening shift, the back shift as they call it at the time, and I saw the ambulance going up the road, and God, I said, well, what the hell? Because I had been up the evening before at the brushing, and there was tops on the roof that we couldn't get down, and we left a note saying that, you know, bad tops there or whatever, and if, you know, they could fall at night without anybody being there, because the mountain, once you took out coal and you put in rock, the mountain shifted. Because you'd hear it cracking and you'd hear it spitting and stones breaking, stone on stone breaking, and I thought something had fallen on somebody. But Martin had got caught up in the rope when he was operating it, and only for one of the lads was just happened to see him, went up and caught him before. That was the worst. That was the worst thing. There wasn't, you know, I had a close, wasn't that close, incident myself. It was on a Good Friday, myself and Donald Conway had been working on it, and it came to almost 3 o'clock, and I was going into a branch to have a look and see.
Yeah, a significant time on Good Friday.
A significant time on Good Friday, and it was about 3 o'clock, I remember it well, and Donald was on the straight road, and I said, I'll go in and have a look and see what's in this. There's much of a shot in it, so I went in, and I was the shot was kind of loose, and I went in like that, and I looked around just to see. And next thing, there was a fall roundabout. It just came down like that and roundabout, and no stone touched me, which was unbelievable. You know, I was standing there with a pair of Wellingtons on, you know, soft Wellingtons. I was standing there, and these stones came round, and they came everywhere, but never touched any part of my body. And I went back out to Donald. I says, I had a close one in there, but I didn't get any belt. Well, he says, that's the last Good Friday we'll work, he says. And we didn't work Good Friday after that, you know. But, you know, there was, the other thing that you remember was the fun. You know, there was great how cracking it. You know, if you said something to somebody inside in the pit, if you said it outside, you'd be on the steps in Boyle at the court, you know.
Yeah, it was a different law that governed the mines.
It was a different law that governed the mine. And, you know, you had guys playing different tricks and that kind of thing. Johnny Odie was up there. Johnny Odie was a legend in the pit, you know, because Johnny was so calm, and he used to be working outside making these hutches outside on that pit. And the boys would be doing, a couple of the guys in the machine men now who'd be in early in the morning to be trying to do things that would maybe annoy Johnny. Now, it would annoy him for a couple of minutes, but he wouldn't. But Johnny used, there's a photograph of him out there where he's on the picks, heating the picks and pointing them. And he used to have the fire above on a little bank like that, and he'd open the air and get the fire going. But when he come in the morning, then he'd sit back and he'd smoke the fire, he'd look at his hutch and that, and next thing the smoke filled up the shed. God, what the hell is this, says Johnny? And he knocked off the yoke and trying to get the smoke, open the door to get the smoke. He got a good bit of it out, and he went in and he looked up the chimney. What was wrong with the chimney? It was nothing. He could see daylight above with the chimney. So he started again, and next thing the smoke again. And of course the pair of boys that had done it knew when to come out, when Johnny would be there and come out. And Johnny was wondering what the hell was this, and looked up again. The two boys had put a sheet of perspex up the chimney, and the smoke hit it and came back down again.
And you could still see the daylight.
You could still see the daylight. Johnny, he called everyone that done something like that an Ownshuk, and he knew who it was, but he used to love the crack as well, you know. Yeah, he was very, very funny like that. And Johnny, I mean, you all remember lots of things that Johnny said, but the one that he, Oliver Rignan knows this, where he was down on the Monday, he was off on the Monday, and had a few pints below in Flynn's. And he came back up and he says, he went into the house, and he knew that he was probably in the bad books when he arrived in with his pints, and he says, hi Mary, he says, did you see the cows? She said, maybe they're below in Flynn's. He says, they're not below in Flynn's. He says, because I'm down there all day and I'd have seen them, you know. So that was it. So, you know, you had great fun like that. You had lots of different characters. Jim Joe Mulhearn used to be up there, and Jim Joe was a great character, and Jerry Degnan and Paddy McNamara used to get an awful rise out of him, you know. Degnan, he'd have him in such a way, he says, I have him hierantic, whatever the hell that meant, but Jim Joe used to call him the rebel, and he was, you know, and you needed that release as well, you know, and you'd have always good fun with guys, you know. But it's funny when you went out afterwards, if you met them out, you wouldn't be talking as much. But when you got back into the pit, it all started off again, you know.
Final question. Did you miss it?
I did miss it, yeah. I did miss it because I didn't mind physical work at all, you know. I didn't mind physical work, and I always felt that, you know, I used to be comfortable with a pick and a shovel, no matter what. I always, if I had a shovel or doing kind of physical work, I was comfortable with it. You did miss it because you missed the money. You know, the money was, there was good money in it, and Flynn and Leahy that I worked with, Bridie Flynn used to do the wages, and you can still see her hand on the wages, lovely, lovely writing. And you know, you got cash every week or every fortnight, and you didn't have to go far for it. And I know it was tough, you know, and that, but I mean, there was men in it longer than I was, and they stuck with it as well, you know. So for anyone that did work in it, they always got something out of it, and you know, the monetary part of it was good, but at the same time, when you see the museum here, the museum is remembering something that men like to do, and that's the simple fact of it, you know. And anybody coming in here, you know, might say, well, it's an awful time, but fellas went in there and done their job. They weren't bothered about going in and doing it, and they went in and done it, came back the next day and done it again, and that, and they had a few pints or whatever, and you know, they made a few pound, they improved their lot. And wasn't that the idea? Improve the lot. And you know, when I mean, I was able to build a house, play football, and work 2 miles from the house, you know, or a mile and a half from the house, you know. And I mean, I can't say that I didn't do any harm out of it, and I enjoyed the company. I enjoyed the company. I you know, when the work was there, I enjoyed the work too, you know. So you know, look, we're all for different things. Yeah. And some people prefer a computer. I prefer to be out and doing a bit of work, or
each to their own.
Each to their own, you know.
Fantastic stuff. Sheerin, thank you so much indeed for sharing your memories of working in the Arigna mines. Thank you.
You're welcome, John.
Thanks, my dear.
I think of the life of the miner who must work all his day underground, where his lamplight is all that will shine there, and it's dark and it's damp all around. It is 2 or 3 miles to the coal face, and the tunnel is jagged and low, but he cannot find work on the surface, so it's down in the mines he must go.